This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Game 3. Unbelievable game from beginning to the end. Just when you thought the Cleveland Cavaliers would be able to change the narrative of this series, the Golden State Warriors basically went in to the land and have basically went surgical on the hearts of every single Cleveland fan as we speak. The Golden State Warriors defeating the Cleveland Cavaliers 118-113. Hell of a basketball game, but nothing pales in comparison to the outright audacity of J.R. Smith. And I'm going to let my man, 50 grand, NBA aficionado, my brother from another mother who's been helping me break down this awesome final so far. He's been rolling with me since day one, my man, www.shawsports.net. Warren Shaw, ripping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. Can somebody holler at JR and tell him to pass me whatever it is that boy's smoking right now?
Yeah, he's smoking a little more than the hookah, man. Just as we get set to record our show, J.R. Smith goes out on Twitter and tweets out Cavs in 7. Literally had me laughing out loud after they've blown a game.
Listen, you said the X factor for this game was going to be J.R. Smith. This is the same J.R. Smith that jacked up that horrendous looking 3-point shot.
Oh man.
You know, look, man. I'm just saying, like, we say that Donald Trump needs to stop tweeting, right?
So yeah, man, it's taken over the Twitter world right now. All kinds of conversation about he must be on drugs. You know, no one wants to hear what he has to say right now, especially if they blow a lead in the final minutes like that. But JR is always keeping it interesting, man. He had a really heartfelt story, obviously, with him and his wife, and and his premature born baby. That was played right before the NBA Finals, and now we've all forgotten all about that because it goes out here and tweets about the Cavs can still win this thing in 7.
Well, listen, there's the family side, and then there's the baller side, and clearly this is the baller side of J.R. Smith. Look, I don't knock J.R. Smith for feeling confident, brash, defiant. I just don't know if whether or not this was the right time for your mindset to be, I got to be on Twitter and I got to tweet out a situation in which you really need to focus and hone in on what went wrong for this Cavaliers team, where they basically had this game in hand with about 6 minutes left to go. This just came down to a couple of possessions that for whatever reason, the Cleveland Cavaliers didn't do that put them in this position, and then suddenly reverted to what they did in the first 2 games that took them out of this position. And we're going to get into all of that, Shaw, but I just find it interesting, the mentality and the mantra of some basketball players in a situation like this in the NBA Finals, that you then decide that the next thing, your next impulse is to get on Twitter and tweet something that, listen, man, you worried about Cavs in 7. How about you worry about Cavs getting 1 in game 4? Because that's all that you have. You can't even worry about 7 games. You have to worry about the 4th game, let alone the 7th game.
Yeah, and again, at the end of the day, because you're always going to say, well, what do you want an athlete to say? But this is one of those things where you probably just shouldn't say anything. You know what I mean?
And you're also giving fodder, right, to the Golden State Warriors, who listen, if the Golden State Warriors already don't feel emboldened right now to do what it's been on their mind, like everybody is on this whole going 16-0. Yeah, that's not it. The fact that they got embarrassed last year, okay, and Kevin Durant brought that up in the post-game interview with Burke. He said, listen, we watched what happened. We saw how the Cleveland Cavaliers basically took it to them in the first quarter. So the fact that we were up by 7 after the first quarter, we felt good. We felt like we knew that we could be in this game. Kevin Durant wasn't even in this picture. Kevin Durant was licking his chops, you know what I'm saying, after losing in a 7-game series to the Golden State Warriors, right? And here he is injecting himself in the equation about how the Warriors had to think differently coming into this arena on the road and handling their business. And to me, this is what's separating the Warriors and the Cavaliers right now is the discipline, right? Because we mentioned all of the things that we talked about. The Cavaliers basically did that for 3 3/4 of quarters of basketball. And then suddenly they reverted right back to the same thing that put them in this position now where they're down 3-0.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because you're right. They played a very good game for the most part, but you have to play all full 48 against this Warriors team. And, you know, even when they were up 7 or whatever it was at one point, you're just kind of like, well, it feels like maybe because Kyrie was having a special night, LeBron was having a special night, Kevin Love was doing some grit and grind things.
The second highest teammate total in NBA history. I think, and I think that there was a tweet about that. I can't remember the combination. I know Elgin Baylor and somebody else, but between Kyrie and LeBron James, they had like something like 70-something plus points, and I think the record is 87 between teammates in an NBA Finals. It's phenomenal. You would think that with that in itself, that should get them to a point where they should be winning this basketball game.
Right. But, you know, again, they got some contributions. JR actually did show up, at least offensively, had 16 points, you know, shot the ball well from 3, 5 of 10 from the 3-point line. But just too many little mistakes in the end and defensive lapses. And for a game where they really were trying, I don't want to take anything away from Cleveland in that aspect. They were trying. This was their best defensive effort they had put, you know, in the finals thus far, making some proper switches, having some good communications, but it was just a couple lapses here and there. And there's some key plays with LeBron specifically, and that's unfortunate because I don't want to be that dude, man. I don't want to be that guy like who's picking on LeBron, you know, blah, 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 and said those things. But there were certain moments and instances, especially when he was matched up with Kevin Durant, where he fell asleep defensively, didn't do the things he needed to do to stay completely engaged and stay attached to KD, and Durant burned him in those moments both times.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and, you know, look, so let's go ahead and go back to that. Let's talk about the final, 6 minutes of play. You talked about the defensive lapses with LeBron James. Clearly, Kevin Durant pulling up. They're down by 2, and just pulls up and just goes winner king on him and drops that daggering 3-point shot. But let's also keep in mind too that while we give all accolades to the performance of Kyrie Irving, he woke up, he was absolutely sensational tonight. 38 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. But nobody is going to talk about that because of what he did in that final possession. After Durant hits the 3, Kyrie Irving comes back down the court. And we wondered if whether or not this, isolation, dribble, and not really be decisive with what he wants to do with the basketball was going to creep in and hurt this team. And it actually hurt this team. This was a situation where Kyrie Irving needed to either facilitate him getting open space or get the basketball to LeBron and they work a pick and roll situation between each other or something. But that shot that Kyrie Irving took while they were down 1 point was an ill-advised shot. And it's a shot that, again, it lends to the argument about why the Cleveland Cavaliers, it's not so much the fact that we don't applaud the Golden State Warriors for what they're doing, but at the same time, the Cavaliers are not giving themselves the chances they deserve to win games because they get out of what got them to this point. And it's inexcusable to me. It's absolutely inexcusable to me.
And I think it's hard when you're looking at it from that aspect because we've been saying, right, that they are going to continue to play that we're going to play. They don't agree with us and other pundits out there thinking that they can slow things down. And for the most part, they were winning this game, and 11-0 run by Golden State closes out. I do wonder though why at times, because I feel like they were really a lot more isolation heavy or straight pick and rolls and then waiting for kind of an isolation thing to happen. But I don't remember, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but did they run like in an inordinate amount of Kyrie LeBron pick and rolls, like that 1-3 pick and roll that we're so used to seeing?
Not that I can recall.
I can't remember.
Yeah, a lot of it was isolation. And mainly LeBron James working the middle of the basketball court, right? Kyrie on the far wing, on the weak side, working the isolation basketball, especially off the switch. And at times he'll have Steph Curry. And again, I'm okay with if that was what they wanted to execute. If that was what the intent was coming off of the timeout after Durant hits the three. I have no problem if that is the intent and you do it. But if you do it with conviction. The fact that Kyrie Irving was dribbling the basketball relentlessly showed me that he did not know what he wanted to do, because there were numerous opportunities where he really should have just drove to the basketball. He should have drove to the lane and he should have initiated contact and probably gone on the free throw line. It wasn't as if he wasn't putting himself in that position through most of the night. He's been making spectacular layups from the left, from the right. You know what I'm saying? The oopsie daisy, the up and unders, all of that was beautiful. To take a step back shot, it makes absolutely no sense. And look, if we break down the numbers of Kyrie Irving's 38, I guarantee you that about 80% of those shots were him penetrating into the lane, not shooting the basketball, which again, another example of taking yourself out of a situation where you could have easily turned the tide after Durant hits that three.
Well, yeah, and I think you can look at it from, a kind of same perspective last year in Game 7 when Steph Curry tried to hit a hero ball three, with Kevin Love, kind of expertly defending him. It just seems like that was a situation you should have moved the ball a little bit and maybe even gotten it back in a better situation. But I mean, that shot specifically is one thing. It's hard to pick on those two guys, LeBron and Kyrie, because they're not even in this game. They don't win this. I'm
not blaming. Yeah, good.
I know.
I just want to make that be known, and I want our listeners to make it be known. But I am harking on the fact that when a game is this close, it comes down to execution. It really does come down to it.
It boils down to the fact that they have to be perfect.
Right.
And that's
exactly.
not a perfect decision. And that was a slip on that thing. You go back to the bunnies that LeBron missed. LeBron missed 2 layups after beating the defense. Layups that, again, hey, those 4 points are pretty much the difference, in this game.
And also lend to another argument. J.R. Smith hits a 3-point shot, okay? He shoots up the three. The fans go wild. You know what I'm saying? The Cavaliers now holding by 5 or whatever the case may be. They have an opportunity to stretch the lead further. And J.R. Smith comes back down on the far end side and shoots this. I can't even call whatever kind of 3-point shot he was making, but it was one of those. You do that when you're fumbling around after practice, or you do that when you're just, I'm tired and he's shooting like this floating sidewinding 3-point shot off the far corner, and I'm sitting there saying, why are you even doing this? Like, it's like he absolutely forgot for that moment that they're still in a basketball game where the Golden State Warriors can still score and tie this game up with less than 2 minutes left in the game. That's what I'm saying. The shot selection by the Cleveland Cavaliers is very questionable in the last 3 minutes. Very questionable. It's almost like they bailed and gave the Warriors opportunities to tie, if not win the basketball game, just simply because they didn't slow it down and look for those high percentage shots that the Warriors would have easily conceded to, because they've been playing with a foul frequent front court the whole fourth quarter. It just loses my mind how this wound up, because this is a game we should be talking about the Cavaliers being 2-1 right now, Shaw.
No, you're absolutely correct about that. I mean, and I just kept thinking, I'm going back kind of at the game log too. I think it was 108-104. Kyrie, hit a free throw. Then you come down there, Curry missed a jumper. Then Kyrie missed another jumper. Then it was Clay who hit a huge three to cut the lead down to 1 point. And then after that, LeBron and them hits 2 more free throws. But it just seems like that three to me was like, I was like, oh. That really bothered me, and that was with 4 minutes left in the game. When Clay hit that, I said I had a bad feeling that Golden State just wasn't going to go away. I think my tweet at that time was like, yeah, they're relentless, and there's just so many weapons that they can throw at you. But let's turn the conversation a little bit away from kind of the superstars per se in this. We know, obviously, Curry had a great game. KD is going to be the Finals MVP, no doubt about it. LeBron, near triple-double again. Kyrie, we already talked about it. I really do believe now it just goes to show you that the guys, the supporting cast, outside of JR, and you can maybe say Kyle Korver showed up a little bit too, but your Tristan Thompsons of the world, the Shumpert. I mean, Shumpert was getting killed on Twitter about his play and his, just kind of lackadaisical defense at times, stupid fouls when he reached in on Curry for no absolute reason at all. like Cleveland just doesn't have enough depth and help, and it doesn't seem like their basketball IQ is even high enough in certain situations to get past Golden State. And again, you need to play perfect basketball. They don't have the guns to do it.
Well, one of the things that I found very interesting about the course of this game, and we mentioned this in the first post-game analysis, game 1 post-game analysis. I said that the Warriors are playing with a different attitude. They're playing with a level of chippiness and physicality that I really think is surprising the Cavaliers some. I know it's hard to see it that way because of the way that this game played out, but and you saw a lot of complaining on the foul calls going on and things of that nature. I was okay with it because I felt like when the Cavaliers dropped the Warriors last year by 30, the Cavaliers just came and punched the Warriors in the mouth in every aspect of the game. They kind of set the tone. And I felt like the Warriors figured out a way, even while they were absorbing fouls left and right? Like, I honestly felt like most of this game, the Warriors are playing with 4 players on the basketball court, right? They didn't play with Zaza Pachulia, right? They didn't play. They couldn't play with JaVale McGee at most points because when the Cavaliers went small, JaVale McGee became a liability. Draymond Green, I mean, it boggles my mind. The guy is a plus 14 on the stats because he was rolling with foul trouble again for most of the night, right? It just amazes me that the Cleveland Cavaliers, with all of this bravado and all of this smack talking, just seemed to be so inferior when the Warriors would get up in their chest hairs. And I felt like that was a sign. Like, part of the inspiration to the Cavaliers making this run was filtered through LeBron James being physical, being tough. He has that runaway dunk on who is it? On JaVale McGee and Kevin Durant, right? And you felt like, all right, this is, LeBron setting the tone. This is where now they start shoving the, Warriors players over. And it just never transpired. Like, you didn't see it from Thompson. You didn't see it from Shumpert. You listen, even Curry wasn't afraid to get up in front of J.R. Smith's face, regardless of what he saw on the Videotron and the whole introduction about, the situation with the family before that. Curry ain't thinking about that. Curry's thinking about what's happening on the court. And I'm just saying, when will the Cavaliers, if they're not going to be able to out-talent the Warriors, they need to get at least into the Warriors' head and eliminate some players who are not mentally strong enough for this moment. It just never happened, bro.
Well, I suspect that maybe you'll see it in game 4, right? Because when you talk about a change of kind of philosophy in how you play, we just knew that they were going to be resistant to it. And we keep going back. This is how they play. This is what they do. And I said, well, maybe if they don't have an acceptable lead at halftime of game 3, then maybe you see in the second half they change that. And I think in the third quarter they got some pace, but they ended up hitting a bunch of shots, so they ended up still playing kind of in the same way, not necessarily with that same physicality and that angst that you're looking for. I suspect, all bets are off now in game 4. That it is obviously a winner go home situation. The series is pretty much over as it is anyway, but I think I don't see how they don't make a change. How can you say, all right, well, we're down 0-3. Let's just continue to do exactly the same thing over again. Like, if they do that and no matter what they lose by, then it's just like, okay, it doesn't make any sense. Like, to me, like, you have to try something different at this point because you're up against a juggernaut team and probably the best team ever assembled in the NBA.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Kali, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Our post-game analysis, game 3, Golden State winning on the road, up 3-0 over the Cleveland Cavaliers, winning 118-113. So Shaw, let's talk about that for a second. Dial up the desperation meter for Tyronn Lue, right? I mean, clearly it's at a 9.5? Is it literally at a 10? When you're talking about shakeup, like, what are you proposing needs to happen? What needs to take place? Are we replacing a player in the starting lineup? Like, what are we talking about here?
Right, and I think it very well may be something like that, in terms of Tristan Thompson's not giving them anything, like nothing at all. And I just, if you're paying him all this money, a rebounder, a defensive type player, and you're not getting that out of him, then, whatever. Maybe you do need to try a different player, a different option. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a guy like Derek Williams, as you alluded to a little bit earlier on, say, hey, maybe it is that time now. Somebody even on Twitter, can't remember who it was, had said something about that and saying, why is Richard Jefferson, yes, he's a veteran getting all these minutes, but why leave a guy with more athleticism and more just overall capability with like Derek Williams on the bench and give RJ these minutes? Again, I suspect with Ty Lue, it's a veteran thing in terms of wanting to trust him. Williams has never been in this situation before. But I think at this point it might be about that. And yeah, again, trying to muddy it up a little bit. Now, Williams is the guy who's going to get on a transition, so it doesn't really necessarily mean that they're going to slow the pace down if he's a guy that they bring out there. But it has to be about some different personnel getting some minutes and some touches out here to complement the play of LeBron, JR, Kyrie, and Kevin Love. That's what I'd be looking at. I'd be looking at a Derek Williams, or potentially, like I said before, even a Dante Jones to come here and just be more physical. Try to get in the grill of KD a little bit. Again, and Dante Jones is not stopping Kevin Durant. No way in hell am I saying that. But I think he might make it a little bit more difficult. If that's all he knows, that's all he's going to do. He's just going to go out there and try to be an irritant a little bit. And I think they're going to need that little bit of physicality.
Sean, I want to flip this. I want to switch over to the other side here where we talk about this Golden State team. I don't want to get too much into the semantics, but I do find it very curious. We were talking about how last year's team that won 73 games in the regular season, that the depth of the Golden State Warriors could very well be the deepest, of all time. And then everything just fell apart for that bench after game 3. Well, after game 2. I mean, Steve Kerr got nothing basically from his bench. And you can attribute it to, Iguodala not being 100% healthy. You could attribute it to something, with Sean Livingston, whatever the case may be. But part of the reason why the Warriors rolled the dice in breaking up the, death by depth lineup, so to speak, was, obviously they felt like their 5 needs to be shored up. And then they can figure out a way to make everything else work with their bench. And it's amazing to me that Steve Kerr, in the magnitude of this situation, has not diverted from the way that he is playing and rotating his players. He played David West tonight. He played Matt Barnes tonight. He played Iguodala. He played Patrick McCaw. He played Ian Clark, Sean Livingston. So my question to you is this, Shaw. How dangerous is this bench? Because no one is actually giving this Golden State Warriors bench any credit. We're highlighting everything is Steph and Clay and, Durant and, and Green. We're highlighting all of that stuff. But JaVale McGee came in and gave them solid minutes. Solid minutes. David West came in, critical jumpers when the Cavaliers could have pulled this game away, right? Because the Warriors did not get anything from Zaza Pachulia tonight. So what are we talking about with this Warriors bench, bro?
Well, I mean, I don't think we've been missing the boat with that at all. I mean, we've been saying all series long and even prior to the beginning.
Let's keep it real. People have not. I really feel like the over landscape. I don't think people really have given credit to the Warriors bench for actually establishing somewhat of an identity that they could be as equally deadly as from a depth perspective as what we were talking about over the last 2 years when they had Barbosa and they, and they had Festus Ezeli and these dudes. Like, I have to commend Steve Kerr for getting what he's getting out of these guys, because last year they sure as hell could have used that, and there were nobody outside of Iguodala that stepped up to help the Warriors when they were laboring and trying to get through the finish line.
Well, one caveat to all of that, because I agree with everything you're saying, right? And I don't want to kind of state the elephant in the room here a little bit, but the fact that Durant is on the team obviously helps these bench players and helps them get their shots off against it like that. You have another playmaker, somebody else who can also take the pressure off those guys when they're on the floor. Before your rotation is maybe Steph and Clay, and then Clay will come off, and then it's Steph and Draymond, and then vice versa, or some combination of that. The fact that one of Steph, Clay, and KD are always on the floor, and with KD and Steph being supreme playmakers on top of everything else, that really is one of the keys that helps this bench continue to be successful. It's just that they have somebody else to take pressure off of them. So now they're going to get shots that are easier for them that wouldn't ordinarily be. And they can focus on, being elite in their roles, whether that be a defensive role or even getting a stop on a possession, because they have other guys that kind of pick them up. So that kind of that addition at the top, if you will, with KD really has trickled down to the entire lineup. And again, I don't want to take anything away from Steve Kerr because he is a great coach and he understands and he's explained to everybody what their role is and what they're going to do, even if you play 5 minutes, 3 minutes, or 25 minutes. He knows what he's going to get out of those guys each and every time they step on the floor.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Golden State Warriors win 118-113, are up 3-0 in the series. Before we start talking about what's going to have to take place for Game 4, and I know we kind of, brushed along those lines a little bit earlier in our conversation. I'm kind of curious, Shaw, about where are you now when we look at Draymond Green? Because he's a curious case, man. I mean, he's the kind of person, he's playing the kind of series right now that from, when you're just looking at it, with the natural eye, right? It just doesn't look like he's comfortable at all. It almost feels like he's still searching to figure out where he is or whatever the case may be. And then somehow, some way, through the course of an NBA game at the finals, you look at the stat sheet, Draymond gives you 8, 8, 7, 1 and 1, right? I mean, explain to me the phenomenon of Draymond Green, because I almost felt like the way that he played tonight, it's like they suspended him again. You know what I mean? Like it's like he had been suspended from Cleveland and just didn't bother to show up. But yet he did have an impact in many respects, especially when the Cleveland Cavaliers had opportunities between the second and the third quarter to really run away with this thing. Either it was Draymond's defense or his assists in getting open, getting the ball to open players to get easy shots, that I felt like is what really kept him as a relevant piece for the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, that makes him, as always, he is the ultimate role player. I mean, he's an elite level role player. And he's going to do the dirty things and the little things that, again, when his shot or whatever things are not falling. And I said the exact same thing. It seemed like he was having an awful game, but there you are, he's got, +5 rebounds, +5 assists, you know what I mean? And he still scraped his way over even to 8 points or whatever the case would be. It's foul trouble and kind of some of the bonehead plays that he still had. Obviously, he had the technical foul as well, too. You're kind of like, oh, he's not really doing that much and not doing well. But this offense, they really run a lot of it through him, and he just does the right thing and makes the smart basketball plays, especially offensively, and then even defensively for the most part. But again, he got a little overzealous, I think, on time defensively tonight, and that's why he got into the foul trouble. And now that I think it's the second straight game he's been in foul trouble, but still, he's still getting it done. And the thing about it is, at the end of the day, if you're Cleveland, this is what scares you, because Golden State doesn't need to be perfect. So Draymond really hasn't been a major factor in the way that he had been throughout the playoffs coming into the finals in this series. He hasn't been that same guy, but yet they're still up 3-0. Clay took the first game off, and then now he's back the last 2 games, and he's been here too. So that's just what it is. They just keep coming at you in waves, while Kevin Durant and Steph Curry just kind of pace you, with their 25, 30 plus points a game, and then just wait for anybody else to kind of chip in and do whatever they need to do.
Well, man, before we kind of sign things off a little bit, let's talk about that Clay game. 30 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, but dude, 6 for 11 from 3. I mean, at one point, I think he hit off 3-4 in a row. I mean,
and it's just you got off to a great start. Yeah,
it's just phenomenal, man. 11 of 18 shooting, just absolutely, phenomenal. And I don't know, some people can get lost in the way that you watch the way Steph and Durant play, right? Durant 31, Steph with 26. And you say to yourself, yeah, let them do their thing. That's not Clay. And that's not how the Warriors believe. And this, to me, is a very stark contrast for what we saw here. Tonight, Kevin Love, he had 27 last night. He had 9 points tonight. And he was virtually, again, disappeared in the fourth quarter. I mean, he wasn't even there almost for the third quarter. And you look at the stat sheet and you say, 9 points, 13 rebounds, 6 steals. But it's like he's conceding to the Kyrie, LeBron James show. And look, if you want to play that, you can. I just don't know whether or not that can hold weight for 48 minutes. And again, That's what it came down to. Because even in the fourth quarter, Shaw, Kyle Korver was shooting more threes than Kevin Love. And, that has to concern you, right? Like, you're supposed to be the trifecta. And if we're going to talk about the Warriors' offensive trifecta, that's Curry, Durant, and Thompson. So something has got to give here, man. Something's got to give. If we're talking about the Cavaliers winning a game, it cannot be with Kevin Love with 9 points. He is going to have to be in double-digit scoring. He's going to have to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, he's got to be able to get a shot off and be acceptable in that too. I think he did a lot of great things defensively and on the glass to take away from the fact that, because listen, I'm not making excuses from any way, shape, or form, and we've been down the Kevin Love road before, especially in the NBA Finals. Last year alone, in terms of like, hey, has he shown up and done enough? Especially in that third quarter tonight, he was rebounding his ass off. You know what I mean? And he had 6 steals tonight, and nobody seems to know really that came from.
I will applaud his defense. And I've never really complained too much about Kevin Love's defensive. I've never assessed his defense because I knew that this was going to be a liability no matter you shake it. It came down to, can his offense negate or equalize what he won't be able to sustain defensively? And so that, to me, I can at least credit that, Kevin Love's presence on the court, 6 steals, it's remarkable. Still was able to get 13 rebounds. You know what I'm saying? Like, that to me was remarkable. But I worry when I talk about the Kevin Love factor, like I talk about the Chris Bosh factor. Like, you're in awe watching this dynamic duo of Kyrie Irving and LeBron James just dropping buckets left and right. And at times, they themselves get caught up into that whole mess. And then they tend to forget getting the ball to these other guys that still need to be in the game.
Right. And it doesn't help if, you start off and you miss a couple shots, and then you start to lose some of your confidence. And it's unfortunate because I don't think on any given night for the Cleveland Cavaliers should JR shoot more times than Kevin Love did. And that's what we saw tonight. Love, so he was 1 of 9, and he's one of those guys who's going to stop shooting if he doesn't have it going. But then it goes back to, well, is it more on LeBron and Kyrie to make sure that they get him some touches and get him some spots? Or is that Ty Lue, saying, hey, make sure we get Love a spot, get him a touch here. But if he's not feeling confident, then that's another issue in that of itself. So it is hard, and I can't imagine what it's like to be on the floor with the guys like LeBron and Kyrie, especially when they do have it going. They're shooting over 50% from the floor and taking 25 plus shots each. Like, I can't imagine what it's like, because the tendency is I play pickup basketball, and if another guy has to go in, I have a tendency like, all right, well, I'm just going to, let this guy kind of do his thing, and maybe I'll get an offensive rebound. And I think that's what Love had tried to do, especially in that third quarter. It's like, all right, well, let me try to do these other things now, because these guys are, they're not really going to be looking for me right now, and maybe they shouldn't be. But I do agree, in essence, that in a regular game, and the Cavs are going to win, and they probably still should have won tonight anyway. But it doesn't seem like a formula that they can win if Love is only going to have 9 shots and will shoot 1 of 9 from the floor in doing so.
Well, I think that's the curse of being a 1A player. Kevin Love coming from Minnesota, Kevin Love kind of being lauded, as the primary focal point offensively for the Cleveland Cavaliers through the course of this season. Not that I'm saying that he's better than Kyrie Irving or LeBron James, but clearly they felt like in order for them to give themselves the best opportunity to win games like these, they need Kevin Love's offense. And tonight was the type of night where even the most spectacular performances by Kyrie Irving and LeBron James can easily be nullified when Kevin Love still is not making his presence felt in the fourth quarter. Once again, the Golden State Warriors knock off the Cleveland Cavaliers 118-113. They are now up 3-0 in this NBA Finals, and the talk of sweep is now in the air. Can the Cleveland Cavaliers muster up anything to stop this juggernaut force that is the Golden State Warriors and prevent at least them closing it out on their home court in the land, in the Quicken, and pushing it back to Oakland? We don't know. Shaw, any final thoughts from your side, brother?
Well, I mean, I think for us as basketball fans, we want to see it maybe go a little bit more just because we don't want to see basketball end. But at the same time, it's like that old dog, man. Sometimes you just got to put him out the pasture, take him behind the barn, and shoot him dead. And I think in some ways,
God.
I think in some ways, that's what the Warriors may be trying to do here, and even us as basketball fans, because even we get one more game out of this. Does it really mean anything? It just means Golden State would have a chance to close it out on their home floor. And, that'd be great for their crowd, I guess. So at this point, hey, as much as I want to see basketball continue to be played at this point, I don't see how the Cavaliers come back in this series at all. So it's kind of like, hey, man, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Focus our attention on the NBA draft, Summer League, and all those other great things, and see how we can gear up to maybe knock off this juggernaut. Somebody can get the piece together, knock off this juggernaut next year. I hate to be seeming so morbid in this conversation, but this is a done deal, bro. It is a wrap, son. So bring out your brooms, man.
Game of Zones. Shaw has proclaimed that the land of Winterfell has fallen to the Warriors.
And winter had been come. Cleveland.
Once again, the Golden State Warriors defeat the Cleveland Cavaliers 118-113. Game 4 will take place Friday night. Once again, we will be on point, giving you our post-game coverage. Be sure to get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. For the Baseline, Callie, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys tuning in. We will catch up with you after Game 4. Keep us locked, because we won't hold back. So we're expecting to hear from you also. You guys take it easy. Game time, Friday.